Anyway, what I was going to say is that it's right on the banks. Hare Krishna, yeah, that's okay. It's right on the banks of the Kaveri River. And when you read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Tirupati, then he all the different places, and then he walked out to Rameshwaram. And he walked along the banks of the Kaveri River. And where would he stay? Prabhupada said in those days there's no hotels, plus he's a sannyasi. You would stay at a temple, Vishnu temple. He would stay, or sometimes a Shiva temple. So right on the Kaveri River, right on that same path that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took, that there's our property. And when they started working on the property, there was the Kaveri is a beautiful river, nice, clean, warm water, just first class. So there's a small dam. We were swimming behind it. And when they looked at it, which the Muslims used to do, they would tear down the Vaishnav and Hindu temples and use them for road construction. They would, if they couldn't turn it into a mosque, they just use it as a bridge or a filling in a road or whatever, the stone. And we started looking at the Madhu Pandit was showing me, started looking at the stone, and it was carved, it was all from a Vishnu temple. So there'd been a temple on the property that they dismantled and used to make this little dam, which was great for swimming behind. So there's very strong possibility, no certainty, but there's definitely that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu walked on that property. And he may well have spent the night because there was a temple there, so. I don't know how he got off on that, but it's very sweet. Oh, and when he would walk, he would chant, Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava. Pahimam, Rama Raksha. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Another gift of my health condition is when it gets cold, my hands don't work. So, something to look forward to, Bhakti Alex. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuni Tira Vanatari Jamuni Tira Vanatari Jayara Marava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Balava Girivanadari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana
Jamuna Tiravana Tari Jamuna Tiravana Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Priya Bhajagacharya Siddhashish Srimati Divine Grace Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Charge Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gaura Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Nam Char Shri Thakur Ki Prem Shri Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Say Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mathura Dham Ki Dwarka Dham Ki Navadip Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Chamuna Maya Ki Ganga Maya Ki Tulsi Maharani Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Sambhira Bhakta Vinda Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Sri Radha Kirti Ki Sri Krishna Sankirtana Juga Ki Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the divine lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Krishna Swadamo Pagate Damaganari Bisaha Kalanda Sadasham Mesha Parano Konudodita Narayana Namaskritchandanam Chaiva Madarotama Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Bhagavatam is his Brindis, the sun, is arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied with knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision through the dense darkness of the age of Kali should get light out of this Purana. Before beginning our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer respects to the personality of Godhead Narayan, to the Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, the goddess illuminating Mother Saraswati, the author Srila Vyasadeva, and my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are on the Canto 4, Chapter 28, Text 23, yeah? Well, that's good news. Pashuvad Yavanar Esha Niyamana Svakam Shayam Anavadravan Anvadravan Anupata Sochanto Brisham Aturaha Pashuvad Yavanaresha Niyamana Swakam Shayam Anvadravan Anupataha Sochanto Brisham Aturaha Pashuvad Yavanaresha Niyamana Swakam Shayam Anvadravan Anupata Sochanto Brisham Aturaha Pashuvad Yavanaresha Niyamana Swakam Shayam Anvadravan Anupata Sochanto Brisham Aturaha Pashuvada Niyamana Swakam Shayam Anvadravan Anupata Sochanto Brishamaturaha Pashuvad Yavanaresha Pashuvad. Slight technical difficulty. Okay, where are we? Pashuvad, like an animal. Yavanai, by the Yavanas. Esha, Pranjana. Niyamana, being arrested and taken away. Svakam, to their own. Shayam, abode. Anvadravan, followed. Anupata, his attendants. Sochanata, lamenting. Brisham, greatly. Atura, being distressed. Translation. When the Yavanas were taking King Puranjan away to their place, binding him like an animal, the king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. Also, you say, when the Yavanas were taking King Puranjana away to their place,
binding him like an animal. The king's followers became greatly aggrieved. While they lamented, they were forced to go along with him. Purport. When Yamaraj and his assistants take a living entity away from the place of to the place of judgment, the life heirs, and desires, being followers of the living entity, also go with him. This is confirmed in the Vedas. When the living entity is taken away or arrested by Yamaraj, tam utkramantam, the life heirs also goes with him, prano nutkramati. And when the life heir is gone, prana anutkramatam, all the senses, sarve pranaha, also go along, anutkramanti. When the living entity and the life heirs are gone, the lump of matter produced of 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, is rejected and left behind for the jackals, for the vultures, or for the worms. The living entity then goes to the court of judgment, and Yamaraj decides what kind of body he is going to get next. This process is unknown to modern scientists, to say the least. Every living entity is responsible for his activities in this life, and after death, he's taken to the court of Yamaraj, where it's decided what kind of body he will get next. Although the gross material body is left, the living entity and his desires, as well as the resultant reaction of his past activities, go on. It is Yamaraj who decides what kind of body one gets next in accordance with one's what? Past activities. Om Gena Tamarandasya Gyana Gena Salakaya Jakshu Shumidatan Gena Tazure Shi Gurave Namaha. Now, what are we looking for? That's what we're looking for. The Omaganatam Randasya Gena Gena Salakaya Jakshu Shumidatan Gena Tazure Shi Gurave Namaha. Philosophy matters. Why? Just armchair philosophy. You believe this, I believe that. Why does it make any difference? Well, because philosophy determines our worldview, how we see the world. What does that mean? That means, what do we value? What's important? What's good? What's worthwhile? And what does that determine? If philosophy creates our worldview, if philosophy creates our worldview, and our worldview creates our values, what we should do, what we want, what we need, what's good, what's true, what's successful. Okay, then what's the next thing? Philosophy. Now I know you know. Philosophy, values, what does that then impact next? Who said that? Way to go, man. Did you say that wrong? Yeah, activities. It affects our activities. Hard to tell with the mask on. It affects our activities. So it matters. What we believe matters. Now here's a simple example. If only this verse was understood. This is the corner. This is what the Vedas understand. Hey, wait a minute. Everything you do is recorded. Everything we do, we're responsible for. And guess what? Death is not the rest in peace. May you only be so fortunate. You wish you were resting in peace. Well, at least, he's resting in peace. He found relief. No way. Everything he's done, or she, whatever the living entity has done in their life, falls on top of them. Buy now, pay later. I remember my son when he was a young boy. ATM, believe it or not, ATMs were once a new thing. And I remember, he was about 6 years old. Sees me put the card in, money comes out. He says, hey, give me one of those. Fantastic. I said, well, the thing is, you can only take out what you put in. So you got to work and make money and put it in. Then you can take out. I said, forget, I'm not interested. When it came free, then, that's fantastic. But you got to work, and when you only get out what you put in. But guess what? So and why does it matter? Well, I'll give you some examples. I was just thinking about it. In other words, Philosophy determines values, determines activities, which determines what kind of world, what kind of society we live in. Philosophy creates the world we live in. Just right out there on the street. Well, what the hell does that mean? Well, because in the Vedic literature they knew this. They thought, well, I'm picking up where I left off in the last life. So whatever I've got, it's not somebody else's fault. It's not, I'm going to rage against God, or it's all random chance, and No. I'm here because I put myself here. And guess what? What I do now is going to determine where I go, so I better shape up. I am the captain of my ship. I am the crafter of my destiny. I've got just what I deserve, and if I want something better, I better shape up. So there was that understanding. And it was also the understanding that Prabhupada gives the example. There was an artificial famine created by the British to get the Indian young men to join the army. World War II. They were desperate. Maybe World War II, World War I. I forget which one. But there it is. And Prabhupada said in another country, people would have, there would have been riots in the village and people stealing from each other. And it would have just been absolute bedlam. But they thought, well, this is my karma. Krishna's put me here. All right, let me do my duty. What about divorce? They think, well, this is my karma. This is my destiny. Let me do my duty. Let me act appropriately. Let me act according to the Vedas. Because if I don't, it's going to come down on me in my next life. I'm convinced, this is a little Oprah moment here, that I stole another man's wife in my previous life. Probably some nice Vaishnav, and messed up his life. And it all came down on me in this life. Ultimately, it was very good. It helped me become a sannyasi. By Krishna's grace, the kids turned out, everybody, it all sorted itself out, It was a little painful at the moment, but I definitely got what I deserved. And because I was hearing from Srila Prabhupada and understood the Vedas, I acted properly. And hey, all's well that ends well, right? So, but the point is that sense of duty that, okay, well, this is where Krishna put me. Prabhupada says that, in villages in India, generally speaking, there's always exceptions to a rule, but an exception to the rule doesn't defunct the rule. Generally speaking, people didn't steal because they thought, well, somebody's left it here, and they'll come back when they realize it. And if I take it, what happens? They see the guy rolling in the street with no arms and no legs playing the harmonica in Calcutta. I mean, that's it. Yeah, well, that's the other thing. But even before in this life getting your hands cut off, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is the knowledge that if I do something sinful, it's going to catch me in my next life. Yeah, it was good if there's a good king and all that stuff. They cut off hands in, well, I don't want to go too far afield. But anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is that there was social peace because they were, we're not talking about if the man is beating his wife or if the wife is, running around with 15 different men. There's always exceptions. But generally speaking, if they didn't just, what do they call it? Oxymorons, what is it? Military intelligence, country music. My son told me another one the other day, which I forgot, but marital bliss. Said this sannyasi, I can get away with that. But the idea that, well, okay, we don't hit it off perfectly. Well, so what? Karma, destiny, find my happiness in seva, do my duty, raise my children, take care of my family, and lo and behold, by service, actually love develops, real love. But my point is this, from the philosophy comes the values, comes the actions, and this simple verse here, knowing that I'm going to have to face up for whatever I did in this life, and that's going to determine what happens to me next, and I cannot escape it. You can run, but you can't hide. So it's an extremely important thing. It's the cornerstone to the Vedic culture. This one simple verse. So there's that. So let's go into some details. How does it end? That's an intelligent point. You know, they always wonder, well, how'd the movie end? How'd the book end? What's the story? You know, you went on a trip. Well, where did you arrive? Where did you go? Where did you arrive? How does life end? Of course, because this is an analogy, and it's Paranjana represents the living entity. Does he go out? Is it peaceful? Oh, what is that? I'm trying to think of the. I can't remember. But it's a line of the sweet prince, not from Hamlet, but you're lying there in that peaceful state. At least you've gotten a peaceful sleep, and it ends in a peaceful and bathed in soft light. And no way, man, you go out with a kick in the pants. How do you leave this world? Just see, as it describes in this verse, everyone's in anxiety, everyone's lamenting, it's full of fear. Where am I going? What's happening? If you work hard, you get attached to something. We're devotees, we're renounced, it's a different thing. But if you work hard and build up your empire, or even think, my house is my castle. You ever seen the sign on the door that says, don't worry about the dog, beware of owner? I built this thing, and this is my house, and I paid off the mortgage, and it's full of my memories. It's got all my favorite furniture. Houses burn, people go into a fire, and I can understand why. Your house burns down, forest fire, everything burns down. You've lost all the memories, It's a really traumatic moment. Because you worked hard, you built it up. Well, what is it at the time of death? You got to everybody's crying there, and if you're a ghost hanging around, they all follow you to the crematorium till they push the button or they light the flame, and then off you go, and they got to stay behind. So it's extremely fearful and traumatic. We had, and I've mentioned it before, I'm going to say it again, Gopala Shapriya, which kind of tips the story, was a big book. She still lives in New Vrindavan. She takes care of the guests and things like that. So I was on book distribution in Ann Arbor, Michigan, University of Michigan, and the big hospital was called Mercy Hospital, St. Joseph's Mercy Hospital. And the only books we had in the warehouse were the 6th canto, Ajamil, 6th canto, part 1. It was coming out in parts. And on the back, it had a nice picture, I think, of Lord Shiva. Everything's nice, but, for public presentation. On the back was Ajamil being ripped out by the Yamadutas. And, you're saying it's yoga, it's meditation, it's peace of mind, Okay, and they're looking at the book, and then they flip it over. What the. And I wasn't the expert. We'd had some people would give the book back. They say, well, so to spook them, So we gave it to this one girl, young girl, looked like she's in her 22, 23, whatever. Gave her the book, and sure enough, I'm waiting for her to flip it over and hand it back to me, and I'll go, okay, I'll try the Gita or some other book. But anyway, it's a long story. We were serious in those days, Temple President ordered you can't get any. You got to sell the 6 ones before you can order more Gitas. So we really had to sell them. So she flipped it over, and she said, "What does this mean?" Literally, went white as a sheet. What does this mean? Tell me what this means. Totally into it. So I just, what the hey? I explained it to her. Turns out she was a nurse, and she worked in the critical care wing of St. Joseph's Mercy Hospital. If they put you in the critical care, you know what that means? Bye. It's a euphemism. It means they just warehouse you there, and it's palliative care, and they try to, shoot you full of morphine and hope you don't complain too much because there's nothing they can do for you. I don't mean to be cold, but there it is, Oh, that's the cover. Yeah, it really wakes people up. It's great. So the point is that she said that they called it hearing the voices, and that patients, it was not always, but it was often enough time to it became a workplace phenomena. They called it hearing the voices. And they would say, oh, hey, room 12's hearing the voices. Because, people are dying all the time. They got to move them out. They got to allocate the beds, who they're going to put what. So they knew that when someone was hearing the voices, they'd probably be dead. They'd be gone in a couple days. They figure, well, 3-4 days, and you're hearing the voices, they'll be gone. And later on, she became an initiated devotee, moved into New Vrindavan, married a very nice devotee. She's a nice person, and married a very nice devotee. Damodar's her husband. So anyway, she said they would describe that they would see people horrible, flaming hair and teeth and fangs, and they would taunt them, with whips and chains and snarling dogs held on a leash. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. They said people would pass stool and urine out of fear. Now they thought, well, it's a lack of oxygen to the brain. They're hallucinating. It's a reaction to the morphine. How do they deal with it? But it was a regular phenomenon of people before they died, absolutely scared witless. And I don't have time to go into it now, but there's a story of Mr. Prakash, who personally saw the Yamadutas. So there it is. It's not rest in peace. You don't go out and, and just off you go, And then, okay, and there's no relief. You take it with you. Here it's describing how your desires, your karma, it all goes with you. So it's not like, oh, well, I'll just there's a guy who parks his car. We got to find out who it is because he's our kind of candidate. He's got a sticker of some guy going, ah! And the bumper sticker, but it's on his window, and it says, life is pain. Have you seen that? I mean, that's our kind of prayer. At least they're thinking, But why do so many people are into Buddhism? Because what is the main reason? What is the promise of Buddhism? Peace. That, you can't control, and it's good as far as it goes. You can't bathe in the same river twice. Everything, you can't control everything. Nothing's for certain but change. So you got to accept the flux of everything, and just don't get attached because your attachment's going to get broken, guaranteed. So just go with the flow, rise above it, breathe, learn to breathe, and you'll get through it. And then Prabhupada calls it spiritual suicide because the perfection, their idea that nirvana, finished with work, there's no desire. If there's no desire, there's no self, no mind to be propelled forward because there's no desire, and you just cease to exist. Now there's Zen Buddhists that you just become nothing. There's the Tibetans that there's some kind of merge. I mean, there's different types of nothingness, but it's spiritual suicide. That's the end. Whoa, sheesh, at least I'm done. But that's not true. You're not done. So it's pain now with no relief and pain future. Ha, 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 ha. It's like there's one flavor and it's pain and no way to get off. That's a pretty scary message. But it's the truth. Almost the truth. And what did they do? Now Paranjan is looking back at his life and everything he's losing. His house, his family, his health. Oh, I used to be able to do that. I used to be able to do that. Oh, I used to have that. And now he's just a feeble little toothless, It's sad. And you talk, I remember myself. When I was a little kid, I was the youngest in my family. What time is it? My brother went to school, then my sister went to school. We used to we used to go with my mom or dad to pick them up at school. Man, I wanted to go to school. All the swing sets and slides, and it looked like a whole lot of fun, A lot of people, I like to learn, I like to read. I said, yeah, man, I'm ready to go. So I'm there, okay, been there, done that. After a couple of weeks, I said, okay, I'm done. No, you can't go home. You're in jail. You're stuck. You're here for 6 years. What? Nobody told. Where'd I sign on for that, So, okay, when I get into junior high, there'll be sports. I get some action. That'll be more fun, They don't call it, because of low self-esteem, it's called middle school now, isn't it? Yeah. So, and then you get into that, and that's just a big hassle and all kinds of cliques and, girls. Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet were 14 and 16? Because that's when you really give your heart and it gets completely broken. People don't do that more than once or twice. They really, it's always sort of hedge their bets. So there was that. And I thought, well, at least I'll play football. First thing that happened, first game I was in, broke my collarbone. Whoop, well, there goes that, So, it was just, well, I'm going to get out of here. Then I'm going to go to college. I'm looking forward. Get into this, get in it. Looking forward. Well, when I get into high school, wow, forget that. When I get to college, you talk to kids first year, oh, they love it. You talk to a graduate, a senior, I want to get out. I want to get into the real world. You got those dimbos who go on, masters, and the bells are still ringing. They never get out of the maze. Then they go back and teach, but that's another thing. So anyway, but you're looking forward. Well, when I get out of college, or when I get my PhD, or whatever it is, and then I start my career. And I'm looking for? I want to work my way to the top, work the way to my top. And then finally, when they're getting close to the top, they think, oh man, when I can retire, it's going to be so much fun. And what do they do when they retire? I swear to you, I've seen it repeatedly. They sit around and think, oh man, when I was in high school, it was so much fun. When I was in college, or when I was a young buck starting my business career, when I made my first million, when I caught that pass at the homecoming game. So they're spending their whole time looking forward. And then when they finally get there, they spend their whole time looking back. When were they happy? When were they peaceful? When were they actually in the moment, as they say? It never happened. The whole thing just went past them, either forward or back. So here he describes how he's looking back. I was thinking about those, we were talking about different aha moments, if you can go where there's not a whole lot of ambient light, which is hard to find nowadays. Even we were out in the desert, we had trouble finding it. Because that was clouds mostly. But if you can all picture this scene, we're standing out there, you're all alone in the desert, or whatever it is, on a tropical island, and you see all the stars. And you can, on one hand, it feels very intimate. On the other hand, you feel very small. Or let's do another way. You take those things that shows your house, and then it goes out, and you see the city, and then you see the state, and then you can see United States, then ultimately you see the earth, and it goes all the way out to the Milky Way, and by that time, you just lost track of, I'm not even a speck of dust in the thing. Now, do we think, and if one's smart, or not even smart, just a little practical sense, everything else is operating under rules. Everything's the laws of physics, laws of chemistry, this whole solar system and universes and cosmos, it's all churning. Of course, we know it's all turning around the pole star, but it's all churning. It's all moving and balanced. And all of a sudden, and we're the one, that tiny little... There's no rules controlling us. We're not under laws. We're not completely blown like a piece of cosmic dust to where we're supposed to be. Oh, I'm independent. People say, oh, when I die, I'm going to become a seagull or a dolphin, or they say so many foolish things, Try being a dolphins are not happy. They fight with each other, and it's off the track, but they fight. Especially when it comes to mating time, dolphins are not just, snuggle me, I mean, they have their moments of kindness, but... So, what to do? That's the point. We're strapped on this wheel, and everyone's going round and around and around, and it's pain in the beginning, it's pain in the end, and it's pain in the middle. Sorry, but what to do? So how does this story, this analogy of Paranjana, how does it end? What happens? Of course, Paranjana becomes the queen Vidarbhi and all that, but what breaks the chain? Other than Dravida and Vijay. Anyone know what breaks the chain? Because it shot, okay, class is done, Jai. Just left you there. Misery in the past, misery in the future, misery now. Ki Jai. What actually happens, you're right, you're close. What happens is, who appears? And Prabhupada says it so nicely. The unknown Brahman, The unknown Brahman, and gives shelter and advice, which Prabhupada describes as the super soul. Super soul gives direction. And what is the, and Krishna does give direction. Prabhupada says, they asked Prabhupada, why didn't you come earlier? Devotees asked, we were just fooling around here, wasting time, banging against the walls. Why didn't you come earlier? Prabhupada's answer was, you weren't ready. And I don't know the Sanskrit, but when the disciple is ready, the guru appears. So in the similar fashion, Krishna directs you to the super soul, gives one instruction. Wait a minute. And what is the primary instruction? How to approach a bona fide spiritual master. And how do you approach that? How does the spiritual master come to us? I'll tell you frankly, generally speaking, we meet a devotee, we meet a Vaishnava, who opens up the door, the guru who opens the path to us. So the importance of what we're doing, I'm trying to fast forward here, the importance of what we're doing, these people, I told you about the Sankirtan devotee, Yasomati Nandana's wife, Radhakund, I think is her name. Her name was Judy, joined in St. Louis when I was the Sankirtan leader. And huge. She was absolutely huge on Sankirtan. Just took off. Couldn't believe it. And I noticed one day she was trying to make the garlands for the deities and she couldn't thread the needle. So I thought, I said to the temple president, she must have something wrong with her eyes. Check it out, Sure enough, she was nearsighted, farsighted. They got her glasses. First day she went out in glasses, with her glasses on, her scores completely crashed. Just crashed, nothing. I said, hey, I was to say, we used to keep scores and it used to matter. Hey, what happened? What happened? Are you feeling sick? Do you need something? She said, no. She said, now I can see their faces. They're so unhappy. They're so angry or lusty or unhappy. She said, I can't do it. So it was a simple solution. You know what the solution was? As soon as she got out of the van, she just put the glasses in her pocket, Then when she got back in the van, put her glasses on. Did huge. So the point is that these people are just, it's solid misery. I don't want to keep repeating myself. But Jesus says, there's only one way. There's only one way. There's only one way out of this place. That's what he's talking about. There's only one solution. There's only one answer. I'm sorry, if in a maze there's only one door out, am I denying your options? Am I stifling your selfhood if I say there's only one way? Is that depriving you of choice? If it's the fact. So the simple point I'm trying to make is it's a fact. The only way out of this is to come in contact with the devotees, to become engaged in devotional service, to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, and to become Krishna conscious. That is the only way out. So how important is our message? We're going to figure out what we're going to do for book distribution, but that's what's going on here. Otherwise, we can see what happens to Paranjan. Okay, we can end there. Question?
I keep on hearing about Mr. Prakash, but I've never heard the story.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take up the time of the others, but it is a nice story. So Mr. Prakash used to be pretty arrogant, South Indian, little puffed up. And every time we'd have a meeting, he would come, fundraising, we want to fix the temple, he would come and he would complain. He would always complain and sour the atmosphere. And once a year, he'd give $100 for Janmashtami. Came every Sunday and consumed $10 worth of prasadam. So 10 times 4 is 40. That's $500 easy, not counting festivals. And he was a lost leader, Mr. Prakash. In case I don't want to hurt his feelings, because it has a happy ending. His wife is initiated devotee, Subbalakshmi Prakash. So one day, she wasn't initiated then. I don't think, maybe she was initiated. Mrs. Prakash called me and said, Badri, I was a householder. I don't know if I was still the temple president, I forget. Anyway, Badri, you have to come. Prakash has had a stroke, and he can't speak. So, did you go with me, Ram? I forget. Maybe Dharma said, we went to see him. I used to go see him. He was in the coma for quite some time, and we would go visit him every few days. And tell you the truth, he looked bad. He looked green. I've seen people when they're about to die. He didn't. I wasn't, rooting for his happy return. But the soul is still in there. Even medically, they say the last sense to go is hearing, So I would go and I would read Bhagavad Gita. We'd have a little kirtan. Because, she was nice. The family was nice. And, I felt sorry for the guy. So there it is. Then I forget the time. But after some time, I got another call. Mrs. Prakash. Prakash, he's woken up. He's awake. You got to come see him. He's awake. And he won't talk to anybody but you. He wants to see you. I was thinking, great, we'll finally get in the will. I thought, no, he's seen the light. Anyway, it's another story about that. So anyway, I went. And he was sitting up. Oh, and the doctor had told us. Doctor was cold. The guy was cold. And he said, it was up here at Scripps. And the doctor said, they're praying too much. You got to prepare him. He's never coming back. I mean, he said to me, because I was the priest, and obviously guiding the family in their time of grief. So he was cold, And I said, first off, I'm not going to do that. I said, people need to work through it. I said, people are not machines. They got to, and I'm not just going to, and I won't do that. And I said, and hey, you never know. He said, well, it'll take a miracle, So that was, and he walked off in a huff. Take a miracle. So anyway, Prakash has come out of the thing. He's sitting up. I walk in. His relatives are there, Mrs. Prakash, and the doctor and a nurse. And Prakash is quite animated. And he says to me, Badri, he said, 3 times they came. 3 times they came. Now, the doctor and the nurse said, yeah, we almost lost him 3 times. 3 times he went, flatline, and we had to, with the paddles, bring him back. Prakash said, no, 3 times they came. 3 times they came. So then the relatives say, oh yeah, we were coming to visit him, and we thought he was intensive care, and we thought he was, but they moved him 3. He said, no, by this time Prakash said, no, 3 times they came. So my turn to chip in. So I said, oh, the Vishnu Dutas? He said, no, he said, the bad people. So there it is, And they began to say, oh, it was horrible. They said whips and dogs. It was, oh. So remember I said he can be a little ornery, right? He's a little, they're still in him. So the first time the Yamadutas came, they said, we're coming for you, and then they left. Then they came again, and they said, we're coming for you, and then they left. So the third time they came, somehow or other, Mr. Prakash, he told me this. He said, my wife's a devotee. And then he said, because he was a little feisty, he said, either take me or leave me. No, first he said, either take me or leave me, but don't torment me, And then he said, my wife is a devotee. And he said, as soon as he said his wife is a devotee, they left. And he woke up out of the coma. You can ask Mr. Prakash. And I tell you, Mr. Prakash literally had the fear of God scared in him. He comes, when we used to be able to be pre-COVID, he would come and he would straighten everybody's shoes, coming South Indian Brahmin, and he would straighten up everybody's shoes, and he helps, he's a little dinged from the experience, but he tries to help serve out. He's a nice, humble, saintly person. He literally had the fear of God scared into him. So that's the Mr. Prakash story. You can't escape. I'm not going to launch off again, I promise. But we got to get it, and I'm talking to myself as well, through our thick heads. There's nothing else. There's only one game in town. It's the only game in town. It's devotional service, surrender to Krishna, get out of this material world, and if you don't, you're just going to go around and around and around again. Want to go again? If they had a machine, like you're on a merry-go-round, But picture the merry-go-round. You're on one of those horses, pop, 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 and you're going around and around. And there's a string of people all the way around, and every time they go, you pass them, they slap you. So you're just going around, smack, 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 smack. You start over again, smack, smack, smack. That's where we're at. And then you get the Vaishnava saying, please, just come on over here. Just get off the machine. Just get right over here. Come right over here. We got prasadam, we got kirtan. Smack, smack, smack. So we'll end there on that happy image. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. No, but a Vaishnav smack, that's sweet. That's the touch of a Vaishnava is purifying.